Welcome to the Smart College Buyer Podcast. My mission is to help high school families pay for college without taking on a truckload of debt. Each episode, I'll share insights into college admissions, financial aid, payment strategies, and more, often with expert guests. I'm Jack Wang, your host. I started helping families after struggling to navigate the process myself for my sons. If I needed help, I knew others did too. Let's dive in. Welcome, everyone, to this episode of the Smart College Buyer Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jack Wang. Thanks for joining me today. I'm very excited for my next guest. And you know, I always say that in every episode, but I'm always very excited to have a guest on, someone who's real expert in the field and be able to share their knowledge with you, the audience. So this next guest is someone who I just met. We are filming from FinCon 24 in downtown Atlanta, and this guest is from the Atlanta area, so he obviously is here. But Brian from Edison Prep, right?
Yeah.
Or Edison Test Prep.
Edison Prep.
Edison Prep. Okay, I apologize. And so thank you so much for joining me today. So let's kind of get into it. So Brian, talk a little bit about what Edison Prep does, right? And sort of your own background and how you got into this.
Yeah. So Edison Prep became the formal company that we've been teaching here in Atlanta since 2010. But it all starts way back when I was in high school. I approach all the testing that we do from a place of gratitude because my parents did not have a ton of money growing up. My dad climbed telephone poles for a living and said, find a way to pay for these colleges that you love so much, that are expensive, that were expensive in 1999. They're even more expensive now. And so I just went to Barnes & Noble, got an armload of books, and it didn't cost a ton of money. It just took some legwork. I quit JV tennis. I used part of the JV tennis time to study for SAT, ACT. And both my wife and I met in college at Washington University in St. Louis and paid for all of college, room, board, tuition via these tests. So I'm very grateful because I'll never make more money per hour than I made studying. It's commas, it's rectangles, it's putting in the repetitions, but it's not that big of a deal. And so I learned that in high school, how big of a deal it could be financially, either getting into better schools or saving money or both. And then that's what we've been doing for, with 23,000 students since 2010. So.
Wow.
Well, 23 states and 6 countries last year. So most of our clients are here in Atlanta since we started here, but ever since COVID, we, like everybody, we started offering virtual and kept it around. So we help people from as far away as American Samoa, which is really far away. So yeah.
That's really far away. Okay. So, and just before we started, you were sharing a little story about your very first test prep client. You want to just talk a little bit about that?
So that would be my high school girlfriend who had a very high GPA, who had very not amazing test scores. So her mom was very persuasive and said, she may not be able to go out this weekend if she can't get her scores up because she's a senior and the deadline is coming. So very, very persuasive mom. But I always tell kids, the number one thing that kills me, these Facebook groups that we all love to hate, these college prep Facebook groups, all the parents always say the phrase, the SAT and ACT are the most stressful part of the high school experience. It's a free country. People can think whatever they want. It's literally the exact opposite of that. And here's why. As good as it would be for me if all that mattered is really good ACT scores, if it could be good for my wallet, etc., we don't even matter until after sophomore year's over. The number one thing, the scariest thing is not test prep. The scariest thing is the person who comes to me having already gotten 9 C's freshman year. Any school that's going to be okay with 9 C's freshman year, you don't need me. The whole landscape has changed. And so it's heartbreaking when I have a kid who might have been distracted or played a little bit too much Xbox freshman year. If you're a parent from day one of high school, you have to stay on them about grades because the first most important factor in admissions should be and is that I take hard classes and I get good grades. And then why I mentioned it's not stressful. What's stressful is the person with the bad grades. What's not stressful is actually the SAT, ACT. You can take the test as many times as you want. My wife and I still take the test each year. She took the test when she was 8 months pregnant with our twins. She insisted. I said, you should take this time off. She still beat me, even though she was 8 months pregnant. But kids get a kick out of it. But literally, you can take the test as many times as you want. And colleges, 95% of colleges now, unlike when you or I were in high school, they super score. So if a kid gets a great math score and a bad verbal score the first time, they can do a bunch of studying for verbal. And that's why all these schools have such higher averages than when you and I were in college, because you can take it more times. There's better study materials. There's free study materials. There's paid, there's YouTube, we live in a golden age. If a kid wants to work hard, these tests are not the stumbling block. They just aren't. So you can self-study or you can study the tutor. And also, for some reason, we attract at our company, we have a monopoly on people who are smart, but worriers. And so there's worse problems to have, but these kids who are smart, if your kid is smart, but a worrier, if you Google how to delete an ACT score, it's right there.
Really?
So it doesn't matter. In the end, the colleges want to look good in the rankings. They'll let you self-report your best scores anyways. But for some kids, knowing that technically if I want to delete it, I can, it makes them calm and therefore able to focus on showing what they know, not freaking out. Oh my God, is there some Edward Snowden secret police that's going to see how many times? No one cares.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And
it's not new. It's been around since, you've been able to delete ACT scores for as long as I've been around.
That's really funny and interesting marketing they have about smart worrying.
That's we're all word of mouth, but just over the years we have a lot of smart, hardworking, worrier type students. So
okay, interesting. So but before we sort of get into some of the details around the SAT and ACT, but you guys also do individual subject tutoring too, right? So it's not just test prep, but if a student needs help in math, you can help with that.
Yeah, so over time, grades have gone up. So part of why a lot of these schools who have gone back to requiring the tests, they were temporarily test optional during COVID. Like University of Texas, they originally had said they were going to be test optional for 5 more years than they were. And they went back immediately because the data was too damning. The people who had gotten in with test optional had a GPA of 0.86 lower.
Wow.
Given that no one's actually getting a 1.1, that's almost the entire spectrum of and so the data was too compelling. They just went right back because there's a lot of grade inflation. And so what's important is most of the parents our clients that buy the tutoring are the parents, not the kids. And their mental mindset of what a 3.5 meant in 1994 is unrelated to a 3.5 in 2024. It just really is so different. And that's why we try to get to people. I wish I could speak to auditoriums of 8th graders saying, please don't hire me for a few years. Please get really good grades during all of high school, because that's the most important thing, because all the doors can be foreclosed. And why we started offering, we were never intending to offer subject tutoring. We started doing it because if I help you get a perfect score on the SAT, but you had a C+ in pre-calc, then that's going to be really bad. So,
right.
We mostly do math and the sciences, physics and chemistry and that kind of stuff. I don't speak Italian. But I know a guy who does, but even if we can't help people, we refer people all the time. Oh, you have a messy family financial situation. I know a CPA, or you need a college counselor or whatever. We just like you, we've been around in the industry long enough. We have contacts, and it's a team effort. It takes a village to, the college is expensive and it's a huge investment. And so if you can do a little research on the front end, the types of people who might watch podcasts like yours, then you can really move the needle.
Right. And by the way, University of Texas is my alma mater.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there'd be no way I could get in today.
It's so hard.
With the grades and test scores I had back then.
Yes.
But that's a different story.
Yes.
So, I'll just share the story. So I'm definitely familiar with the Facebook groups, right? I see a lot of stuff out there. Pretty comical, quite frankly, to me. But I've heard this story. Some high school out there, right? Mm-hmm. This maybe this is like the equivalent, like looking for Bigfoot or the Loch Ness monster. But I heard some story about some high school out there that offers honors gym class to help kids up their GPA, right? Because it's an honors class. I'm like, so I don't know if it's an urban legend, but I'm always on the lookout now for this high school to see if it actually exists, right? Because if it actually exists, I want to go check it out.
There's multiple answers to that. So it's true in a way, in that, first of all, there are some colleges, I won't call them lazy, I will call them drowning in applications. There are some colleges, they just take your GPA straight off the application and it is what it is. Other colleges, most colleges, they recalculate their GPA. They'll take out marching band, they'll take out PE, they'll take out they'll keep it to the core, right. the history, the English, the math, the science, the foreign language type stuff. So usually whatever kid with GPA is on your kid's transcript, if they apply to 10 schools, they will probably have 10 different GPAs at those schools. But yes, because people don't want to dilute their GPA taking a non-AP class here in Georgia, like in a couple counties of the kids we tutor kids from, people will take online, like pass fail summer gym class, because that way it leaves them opportunity to take an extra AP class during the year and not dilute their, which this gets into game theory and way too much detail. But when there's so little room between the top and the top, it's a way that some people can try to vie for valedictorian by getting one more AP than their friends have. And some schools have started getting rid of it because many people, it became too much drama, because parents who didn't know that felt like my kid lost out on being able to get the top rank because that. So
they missed out on the online gym class.
But that would not exist if parents weren't so paranoid because GPA is so high.
Right.
I mean, so you and I both know Choose FI is one of the biggest podcasts out there. On my original podcast episode with Choose FI 5-6 years ago, I cited a school that's like 5 miles from our office where a 4.387 GPA, not even top 10%, and it goes up like 0.1 every year, every 3 years. And so I was using them as an example, mostly like applauding them for their transparency, because most schools do not publicly. I mean, they'll give it to colleges, but they don't.
Right.
Most schools don't publicly post their profile. They did. They started getting calls from after the Choose FI episode, from out-of-state journalists asking them about their legendary grade inflation. So I'm responsible indirectly for them not publishing that anymore. And so,
thanks.
So some moms who go to that school, they're like, well, thanks a lot. And so, but the whole point is, I didn't cherry pick. They were just transparent. There's schools in Atlanta that are far worse than that. Like, and so again, it goes back to parents, be consumers. You have 3 kids, and college might be a $250K expense. Like, go be that mom. Like, if you're gonna selectively pull off that mom at the counseling office, get a copy if they'll give it to you, or maybe they won't let you keep it, but they'll show you the GPA distribution so you can know, if I want my daughter to be in the top 33%, I really need to stay on her to make sure she gets at least of this, because the problem is it's not personal. Like, if Washington and Lee is a great school, but it's also smaller than my high school I went to as it's a small school. And so there's one high school here in Atlanta. I tutored the entire cheerleading team one year, and they were all friends. There was a great group of girls on the cheerleading team. They all, except for one, wanted to apply to Washington and Lee, and they had amazing GPAs, amazing test scores. And I had to tell their parents, like, please make alternate plans. It's not personal. Like, when schools say you're not competing with your classmates, that's garbage.
Right.
Because it's not personal, because if Washington and Lee is smaller than a high school, they can't take 9 kids from one high school.
Right.
So it's not personal. It's just, you have to understand your context. Texas A&M, they're enormous. They can take 9 kids from one school, but there is competition there. GPA from day one, etc.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's fascinating, and I could talk about these stories all day, but it's because you hear all these things, right? You see all these things. So let's talk a little bit about tests, right? So colleges today, before we get into the tests first, I want to, there's a lot of terms out there that sometimes confuse parents. There's colleges that require tests. There's colleges that are test optional. And then there's colleges that are test blind. Can you just take a moment just to kind of talk about the differences and sort of what they actually mean?
Sure. So about 8%, just 8% of the schools in the nation are test blind, meaning they're blind. They cannot even use the scores at all, period. The majority of all those 8% are specifically the California system, the CSUs and the UCs, based on the lawsuit from a couple of years ago, the state stuff. But it's pretty rare. Other than the state of California, test blind is exceptionally rare. Then there's about 10% of schools that are test mandatory. The more elite the school is, 5 out of the 8, soon to be 6 out of the 8 Ivy League schools went back to requiring it. All of Tennessee, Georgia, Florida. Well, Florida never went test optional even during COVID. And also Georgetown, military academies. But the more high ranked the school and the further it is from the West Coast, the more likely that a school is going to require. But by and large, about 80% of schools are test optional. But that is such a messy term. Test optional in what way? Because there are schools like Purdue that are test expected. They coined that term. Like, we will technically let you apply, Mr. Quarterback or Mr. Point Guard, but 97% of the kids that got in to Purdue sent scores. They expect a test. There's limited exceptions. Auburn coined their other term, test preferred, only 6.5% of kids that got into Auburn did not send scores. So it's possible, but you have an 800% better chance of getting to Auburn if you send scores than if you don't. They're the number one in the nation. They'll never be dethroned as the biggest gap. And so, but to be fair, at Pepperdine in California, like only 20% of applicants even sent scores. Like, it's a different world out there. If your state touches the Pacific Ocean, when they say test optional, they mean it. Like, ironically, except for the two best schools. Stanford just went back and Caltech just went back, mostly out of frustration. MIT was one of the best first schools that went back to mandatory, and they took some flack for it. It was a tail end of COVID. The professors quietly, the administration did a good job, producing the data that showed that it was really a big deal. But they had a bunch of professors that were frustrated and threatening to leave because they're used to, like, I do really well in tests. I would have been the dumbest person at MIT. It's the most elite, intellectually smart school in the world. And so if 25% of the class had a 21 on the ACT that they didn't submit, but they had a 4.5 GPA that's so common, it's very frustrating. But also, and since we're here at recording here at FinCon, a financial conference, to me, the topic that's not talked about enough in college admissions is the biggest disservice you can do with somebody is overmatching, where you put a kid in over their head. My next door neighbor, freshman year of college, he got in for other reasons. Because even before test optional was a thing, there's certain categories. There's sports, there's I'm the governor's daughter, there's whatever. This kid got in, he got a 1 point, I don't know what, 1 point something. And he was politely asked, why don't you choose to resign and go and leave? And so he did, and he went back to another school. He did fine there. But he still left with really expensive student loans from Washington University in St. Louis. And so there's not, and those are not dischargeable in bankruptcy. Like people like you and I know this. Parents don't realize, it's okay. You can't get rid of those. And so you leave with an albatross of student debt around a school if you're inappropriately matched. And so college counselors always say, like, to a fault, it's all about fit. And they get teased because they say the words fit so much, but they're not wrong. They say it because it's true. It's about finding the right fit for your major, for your academic stats, so that you can thrive and be someone who doesn't fail out or has a good enough GPA for good internships and all that. But the thing is, if you take the 80% of schools that are air quotes test optional, there's so many fine print, except for nursing. Elon University, they're test optional, but not for nursing, but not for the honors college. But Alabama, test optional, but not if you want merit aid. Oh, but wait, not if you're homeschooled, not if you're like there, so there's the black and white stuff, like not for this major, not for honors college, not for merit aid. But then there's also the differential. At Boston College, so Auburn's 800%. Boston College, 270% chance that you get in 270% as often if you send it. So taking one extra AP class is never going to make you 270% more likely to get in. Right. The single biggest binary factor at a lot of the top schools is truly that. Again, there's a few schools in the West Coast, but literally the proof's in the pudding. This is a funny story. My mom hates it. My mom freaked out because she was never in a cubicle. I was a corporate consultant for 10 years. And when we just had twins and we bought a house, we renewed the lease at our office, and then COVID happened, and then the word test optional happened. My mom was freaking out. I'm like, Mom, you weren't in a cubicle. It's not real. It's corporate doublespeak. It's going to be fine. And I'm super entrepreneurial. If something else happens, I'll figure it out. Yeah, it's going to be fine. And so she's like, I hope you're right. Our team, here's how test optional is. Our team has grown from 2 people to 23 because of test optional. Because most parents have been in corporate America and understood intuitively it's just corporate doublespeak. Right. But those who didn't found out the hard way when their oldest kid got rejected from being test optional at UGA, and they paid full price for LSU or something. And so and if it's a real 6-figure mistake on some of those parents' part. They still remember that 6-figure mistake very fondly, not fondly. Yeah. And so, to me, I'm pretty mellow. Like, this is about as dressed up as I get. Like, the dishonesty kills me. Just say like, here at our school, you know what? If you want the art school, test optional. If you want engineering, you really should have 1,400. You're gonna have a hard time getting in. Yeah. Like, I would just love that level of candor. It's your school. You can do whatever you want. Just be honest about it. Right. If they say that people are not disadvantaged by not sending scores, like, and to their credit, when we compliment Fordham University is one of only 5 or 6 schools. We've done some mystery shopping, emailing schools to release data about stuff. And they released, here's our data for those who submitted scores in 2023. Here's those who did not. you got in 141% as often, but they admitted that on their webpage. They're like, if you're capable of getting good scores, you really should send it because it's really, it helps you, as you can see. And so I wish more schools, good on Fordham for doing that. I wish more schools would do that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many points you touched there. It's funny. I'll go back to sort of the COVID one. So, I'm doing college planning at the time I was married. COVID happened, world shuts down. I'm thinking my business is just over, right? Just kind of like what your mom was thinking, right? Like it's over. And of course, essential workers at the time were like supermarket workers. So I remember thinking, all right, my next career is I'm going to be scrubbing toilets at the supermarket, right? That's what I'm going to end up doing because I don't know how to do anything else. That's what's going to be, right? So I remember that. And I ended up having some of my best years during COVID.
Oh, yeah.
Which is just incredible, right? Would have never thought that. But you're absolutely right. Like I see this stuff. And on the financial side, you touched upon this, is there are a lot of schools that are test optional, but if you don't submit a test score, you either get no merit or reduced merit, right? And because I work more with family finances, like, no, you got to put up like it's one thing if you take a test and don't do well, then maybe we'll look at schools where that doesn't matter. Okay, fine. But if you take a test and do well, we're talking real money here.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? Like you said, and the mid rates can be very different. And so, and it's funny because I have heard those terms where like test expected, test preferred, we're diving deep into like the thesaurus here, right? Like how many more terms can colleges come up with to basically say we're test optional, but not really?
Test optimal is a new one.
Test optimal.
Yeah. So I mean, it's funny. I mean, it's become a running joke.
That's amazing. So let's get into tests a little bit. So I'm from the East Coast, right, where it's far more SAT centric. But, other parts of the country, it's a little bit more, ACT is a little more popular. Any tips or advice in terms of, if a student's thinking about taking a test, right, as you said, they have two choices. So do you have advice on sort of which path they should pursue, or should they just try both and just give it a shot?
They should never choose blindly. So we do mock tests every weekend, virtually and in person all year, because the worst painful thing is a kid realizing I blindly chose the SAT because my girlfriend took the SAT. That's the worst reason to choose the SAT. Take a mock test of both. So you can either take your PSAT scores, as we're recording here, October 20th, 23rd, whatever. They just came out yesterday. And so you could take your PSAT score and then take a mock ACT. It produces 6 numbers, 2 for the PSAT, 4 for the ACT. It's a 5-second analysis as to which one's better. It's better to be varsity in one sport than JV in 2. Right. So too many kids, they're busy as it is. Don't have them prep for both tests. Take a little time in the front end, seeing which one I'm better at, and ride the stronger horse, because only 10% of our kids that do the mocks are they truly tied. About 90% of our kids are over one standard deviation better on one test or the other. So why waste time?
Right.
My older sister was better at the SAT. My younger sister, ACT, I was equal on the two. But it just take that time to do it. You can do it on the Blue Book app for free on the SAT, or we proctor mock ACTs. It's super simple and free to do that and not waste time. But the other thing is the right timeline. If I were a high school principal, they would hate me, but then they would eventually come back and admit I was right. I would make all the sophomores, the last 2 days of sophomore year or near there, come take a mock test of both. If every sophomore in America scattered for the summer, before junior year to summer camp and whatever, knowing which test they're better at, everybody wants to do well in the tests. The best of intentions, but then, oops, summer camp, oops, football 2-a-days, oops, all of a sudden I'm a senior. Like the hardest part for some kids is just getting the freaking mock test to happen. And so if a parent who's listening to this if all you do sophomore year, freshman and sophomore year, is get ridiculously good grades that we talked about, and taking mocks by the end of sophomore year, you are ahead of 90-something% of parents, because we beg parents, take it before summer starts. I still have kids who, here we are, again, close to Thanksgiving, and they're still like trying to RSVP for mock tests. It's been forever trying to do it. And they lost because the test is only 7 times a year. There's 7 bullets in the chamber, so to speak. And the average kid takes it 2.5 times, half take it twice, half take it 3 times. So if you kneel the ball down on the first 3 or 4 test dates, you better really hope everything goes well on those final 2 or 3. And so, because when kids wait too long to start, we don't care when kids work. We tutor year round. So it's not about me or selling anything. We'll tutor year round, whatever's good for you. If you're the quarterback, yes, we should do second semester. Like, just study whenever you have time to study. But so many kids, by waiting too long to start testing, like in April of junior year, they're not showing what they know on the test. They're showing what I know, clouded with the stress of I'm not doing that well. And I'm behind. My friends are all finished and I haven't started. If you let the mind games play, then it's not a true reflection of what you know. That stress and all the other those can kill you.
Right. So it's really interesting because I know, and God bless guidance counselors because they have so much to deal with. But I know at the high schools near me, there's not even a question about which test to take. It is SAT all the way. I don't think the words ACT, those letters even come out of anybody's mouth. So when I say, hey, there's another test and you can maybe try that, right? Sometimes people look at me like I have three heads, right? Because it's just automatic SAT, period, right? Like, and when I was growing up, it was that way too. There was no choice. It was SAT and that's it. But that's a different issue. So you talk a little bit about the timeline. So ideally take mock tests sophomore year at some point.
The end of sophomore year with one exception.
Okay.
So if you're in Algebra 2 as a sophomore, as a slight majority of people are, yes, then take it at the end of sophomore year. If you're not starting Algebra 2 until junior year, wait until around this time, Halloween. And people who are a year behind in math taking Algebra 2 as juniors should start their prep right after New Year's so they can take their mocks in October and November.
Okay. But also the PSATs in October.
Or take the PSAT in October and then an ACT in November, a mock ACT, and then you're still fine.
Okay. Very good.
But the PSAT, and this is important, the most common thing that is 98% of the money that is spent on PSAT preparation is a waste. And it's just parents being robbed. That sounds bad to say that, but it's true. Because here's the thing. The PSAT, I teach pro bono boot camps in South Georgia, and I can tell you some interesting stories. It's a different world. The PSAT has two main uses. Yes, for the people who are the top 50,000 scorers out of the 2 point whatever million, it can be big money and scholarships and honors.
National Merit Scholar.
And in places like where I teach the rural boot camps to those kids, in places where the college conversation, where college is a definite maybe, it's a great way to get the college conversation started. But the messy middle, a lot of your listeners might be just suburban mom, whatever. If your kid, I'm a nerd, I track data incessantly. If your kid did not have a cold 1300 on the sophomore PSAT, we've had one kid out of all 23,000 we tutored who has started below 1300 cold as a sophomore, yet gotten national merit finalist. It's not impossible, but your time would be better spent doing other things. But versus if you are that weird kid who got a 1440 sophomore year, please, make time wherever in your schedule to right before because the junior year PSAT, it's a one-shot deal. It's for all the marbles for the PSAT / National Merit Scholarship test.
Okay. So, obviously families and students can feel very stressed about this. Do you have any tips in terms of, well, I'll say it this way. One of the questions that I often see is, my kid scored this, should they take it again? Now, obviously, the answer to that is it depends. It depends on where they're applying and then what the rest of their application looks like, obviously, right? But are there any rules of thumb? And maybe there aren't, but are there any rules of thumb that says, if you got this or you feel like you can increase your score by X points, you really should take another shot versus, no, you really should stand on what you have. Are there any kind of rules of thumb governing that?
It just depends on the schools you're looking at. I mean, so most schools publish their middle 50% range, and you want to be in that middle 50% range at least. If the further you can go into that range, the better. Or if you can shank it wide right, then they might throw money at you. But yeah, that's the thing. I will tell you one thing, and this is, I don't know who listens to your podcast, but my wife says this statement's a little dramatic. I don't think it is. So this is an ACT analogy. The ACT rounds. So if you get a 32.5, it rounds up to 33. If you look at the top 50 or 60 colleges in America, the number of them whose middle 50% range for the ACT is specifically a 33 to 35 is huge. It's a majority. The vast majority are specifically a 33, 35. MIT, 34 to 36. Okay, MIT. But the thing is, so many kids, they get a 32, which to be clear, a 32 is a ridiculously good score, top 4%. But the most important moment in a competitive elite applicant's life is when they go from 32.25 to 32.5. Because if you are below that 25th range, are they going to want to use one of the, if you're at a school like Georgetown that has 33 to 35, their test mandatory, are they going to want to use one of their 25% on you? Your odds go up so much more dramatically at that one little inflection point. And then, more is gravy.
Right.
But that is the thing.
Right.
But more importantly, and we didn't talk about merit. I built this website this summer called Merit Aid Grids. So it's just meritaidgrids.com. And here's your GPA, here's your test score. Hundreds of colleges, it's just my passion project for the summer. My intern built it, I've cleaned some stuff up. And hundreds of colleges now will just say, if you get this GPA and this test score, this much money, no questions asked. Let me give you an example, because so many parents think that if I don't have a 36 on the perfect score of the ACT, I'm screwed. If you go to the University of Missouri, Flagship has an amazing journalism program, Mizzou's great. If you get a 3.9 GPA, which when you and I were in high school was hard, it's a little more common right now, but a 3.9 GPA and a top 15% ACT score, $84,000 of post-tax money, no questions asked. So students who might have wanted to go to the UGA School of Journalism here locally, it's really hard to get in UGA these days. So many of them are in the journalism school there, where it's not quite the same price that UGA would have been, but they got most of the way there to close that gap. Right. So it's a great site that we have had 12 people. This is the cool thing. I built it saying, we'll have a little button, like, did we miss one? Let us know if we can add one. 12 schools got submitted by random people on the internet in the first week of operation, which is people paying it forward, because I want people to find that out before the first kid, not before the third kid.
Right.
And notice, you can get 84 grand from Mizzou with, yes, a top 15% score, but even if you get a 23, which, to be clear, 23 is a top 37% score, you can get as much as $34,000 with just a top 37% score.
So still good.
Yeah.
Right. All right. So we have time for one last question, Brian. And by the way, that's a great resource. So we'll definitely put that in the show notes. Time for one last quick question. What's your top college planning tip for families, whether it's test prep or anything else? What's your number one tip that you want to share with families?
Number one tip, honestly, is to stay on your student first 2 years of high school to make sure the grades are on point and that they get involved in a couple activities that they love and that they're going to stick with to have some good extracurriculars on their application. So you do not have to do 1 year of 30 activities that actually will hurt you. So sometimes people feel like they're checking a box. I have one kid who, started a political club where it's, they learn all about the political process. It's not that hard to do, but he loves it. He wants to be his goal is he wants to be either Bradley Whitford from the West Wing or James Carville. Mm-hmm. And but he made a club, and the club got authorized to do a field trip where they came down here in Atlanta to go to the Gold Dome.
Oh, wow.
And most kids, inertia, I'll just check the box and join. If you've done the good grades, if you've gotten the good grades, you've gotten the good test scores, you've checked that box. Now, hopefully you have some good stuff in the activities, because that kid that I'm talking about, he's cool. And I like James Carville too. That kid, he got into schools that were with slightly worse stats than a lot of his friends. He got into UNC, he got into all these other places with 1 or 2 fewer AP classes, slightly lower grades, 1 or 2 points lower on the ACT. His friends were mad. His friends had also done, I did NHS and 2 years of violin, and that's it. So if the table stakes is good grades, because good grades are so common, add in test scores. If you've done your part on the grades and test scores, then who's going to get nudged over that goal line can be the essays, the activities, the other stuff, etc. And one last note for athletes. I don't know the rules. I have never educated myself about the timelines, when it's legal for coaches to contact you. I feel like there's a lot of illegal communication that goes on, because I see, and this is, if you're a recruit athlete, it's not about sketchiness. Parents can ask, the kids can ask the coach, not give me extra. They can say, what do I need? I see so many kids who show me an email on their phone that says, listen, our sport is tennis. We don't have that much pull, but if you get this, we're golden. And once the kid has marching orders, you'd be shocked to see how hard they work. So we have 3 players who are in the NFL right now. They got to get into their schools with a little different numbers than normal. So, but athletics is a, don't discount how much that can make a bump, because nationwide, almost a third of certain schools there is athletes. So.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Brian. That was great information. You had shared so much. I learned a lot. I mean, I hear a lot of this, but I also learned a lot. That was awesome. And we'll definitely put the Merit Grid website in the show notes so people can look it up themselves. So many thanks to you, the audience, for listening or watching this podcast. Many thanks to Brian Euffinger of Edison Prep for being on with me today. I thought this was fantastic, and you shared so much. So as always, folks, watch out for the next episode, but stay healthy, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Smart College Buyer podcast. I hope you found the information useful for your family. Follow me on LinkedIn for more episodes, videos, and tips. The link is in the show notes. Remember, you can spend time now to plan and strategize, or you can spend more money later. Success in college admissions and financial aid isn't about luck. It's about being intentional. I'm here to help you every step of the way.